Hi everybody, my name is Miles Wallace and I'm with Peak Performers. We're a nonprofit staffing and recruiting agency that helps professionals with disabilities find jobs and advance their careers. Today I'm here to tell you about the top jobs we're recruiting for this week, as well as give you a weekly recruiter tip. Let's jump right into it. First up this week, Peak Performance has partnered with a Texas university to help them search for a construction project manager. So if you have overseen large construction projects exceeding $25 million in build costs, we'd be happy to look at your resume for this very unique opportunity. Next up, Peak Performers is looking for multiple accountants, so whether you're just starting your career or you have many years of experience and you'd like to work possibly with the public or with the private sector, Peak Performers has multiple openings we'd love to check out your resume for. Do you have some exposure to the mortgage and banking industry, and would you like to find an office job? If so, we are currently looking for multiple license and permit specialists. Finally, if you're looking for a remote role, we have one for you. This is a position of a credit financial analyst, and so if that applies to you, we look forward to seeing your resume very soon. So this week we're talking a little bit more about how to make the most impact with your resume in a relatively short amount of time. Now, when I go to a job fair, typically a job seeker is standing out there in front of me and they hand me a sheet of paper, which is their resume, and I will spend 6 to 10 seconds reading it right there in front of them, and then we're going to have a conversation. In 6 to 10 seconds, as you can probably imagine, I'm going to miss some things. Now, inevitably, I will ask some pretty dumb questions where they say, well, if you've just read my resume a little bit closer, it's right down there. In the world of recruiting, where you are submitting electronically, realistically, you don't get any second chance, and once the recruiter gives it that 6 to 10 second look, they've already moved on from your resume. So how do you make the most impact with that 6 to 10 seconds? Well, here are my 5 tips. The first one that I like to include there is to add an objective summary. A lot of times recruiters may not read the cover letters. It still might be a good idea to include it in case they do, but if they don't, I like to include it in the objective summary along the top, which basically just says, hey, this is the kind of position that I'm seeking. And then also, here is a quick summary, 2 to 3 sentences of the skills that I have that make me qualified to do this particular job. My second tip is to make your resume extremely skimmable. And by this, I mean avoid large blocks of text. Instead, use bullet points, use italics, use bold, and try to make it very easy and pleasing to read as you go through it. This means that in that 6 to 10 seconds, I'm going to absorb and retain more of the information. My third tip is to focus on the keywords. So for this, go back to the job description. I want you to physically print it out and highlight it. I know, old school, right? Highlight the keywords that appear in there and then make sure that you stick them into your resume. And this does 2 things. First off, robots are going to read your resume first, and this makes you perform better for them, but this also is more pleasing for recruiters too. A lot of times recruiters may not necessarily speak the language of the thing that they're actually recruiting on. So what this does is this means that a recruiter that's going through and doing a very literal interpretation and literally trying to match keywords is able to match more of them and is more likely to give you a call. My fourth tip is don't assume that we know what you know. And this particularly comes up with more mid and late career job seekers. Typically, they may have been in the field doing a particular thing for 10 or 20 years, and so they just assume that we know all these various different skills that they have because those are foundational. The reality of it is, again, the recruiter may not speak your language, so think a little bit more about how you can make sure to draw it out. And then the final tip that I would throw out there is find your Goldilocks length. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to how long your resume should be. If you are applying for a larger organization and typically going up against, hundreds or thousands of other job seekers at the same time, typically shorter resumes are going to perform better. But if you're applying for a public sector job, or if you're applying for a more senior C-suite executive kind of job, typically longer resumes are going to perform better in both of those circumstances. Just really think about your audience and how many people you're competing with and what they're expecting, really. I hope that these 5 tips have helped y'all. Again, this has been Miles from Peak Performers. We'll see your resume very soon because we are hiring. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye.